Good morning. My name is Lois Gish, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm so glad to be here with all of you today. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati, occupying land that was once the sacred space of the Adena, Hopewell cultures, and the Miami and the Shawandasi people. We are a community committed to social justice and also committed to supporting the various spiritual and ethical paths of our members. We strive to be as much of a welcoming community as we can be, for we know that we can only grow to become better people by recognizing that we all need each other. That commitment to interdependence calls us to take care of each other's needs, whether they be physical or emotional. Therefore, we provide gender-neutral restrooms, hearing assistant devices, spaces for our children to be part of our community, and we encourage you to be as comfortable as possible in our worship and community spaces. If you would like to know more about our Unitarian Universalist Church, please contact us at member-care@firstuu.com. Today we are welcoming Peggy Faw Gish to the pulpit. For those of you who do not know Peggy, she is my sister-in-law, and she has been an international human rights activist for nearly 40 years. She is going to share with us today a little bit about how her faith has sustained her over all these years of work. It is such an honor to have you with us, Peggy. She will join us for conversation at our coffee hour after the service, and we'll also have a few books, copies of our books for sale. And now I'd like to invite Stefan Marks up to give us an update from the board.
Good morning. I hope you're all well today. My name is Stefan Marks. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees, and part of today I'm going to give a very, very brief summary of what the board's been up to, and also to kind of update you on a situation as well. So, relative to what we've been doing, we've been looking at the budget, and of course, when we start looking at things like the budget, actually it makes the board scream as well, but we are basically working through that, and we will be having information to all of you next month. We are in a situation where we have a challenging year to come, and we will be asking your help to help sustain the church. Part of that is to help us find more people. Basically, we need to find ways to grow the church. So more to come on that. Amy Bottomley, our board president, will be giving an update after the service on the issues that have been talked about in an email that was sent to the entire congregation last week, and we'll do an update then. One of the things that I appreciate about everybody who comes to our church and everybody who watches the services on YouTube is the act of showing up. By showing up, we are all doing our part to make this place a better world, whether we're part of this institution, whether we are just kind of interested in Unitarianism. And religious freedom is a cornerstone of our faith, the search to find out the truth, and we need to protect it, we need to embrace it, we need to ensure that it can survive. By showing up today, you're doing that, so thank you.
And now we will light our chalice, the symbol of our chosen faith, with these words from Christopher Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we live together. And now please rise in body or spirit as we sing our vision song. And now that we've lit our chalice and have begun our worship service, please turn and greet your neighbor. When you hear the singing bowl, it's time to come back.
Everybody up here, you're looking like a shadow.
Okay.
So, I mean, just, yeah, I mean, just so,
Right.
because, you know.
Thank you.
Peace World by Alexandra Schmidt. Peace. Pe. Maluia. Peace. Paz. Paz. Salam. Pe. Amahara. Peace. Pe. Amani. Raua. Fried. Pokui. Pe. Frieden. Freda. Burris. Salam. Santi. Hewa. Piyangwa. Peace. Falamu. If you are watching from home, you may pause here to learn more about the animals pictured in this book. So many languages, so many places have words for peace. So I wonder, why is peace so hard to find?
We're going to wait. This is a time when we think about the joys and sorrows that are in our hearts, and we're going to have the children participate today. The bowl of water before me represents the love of our community. So we drop a stone in the water to seek a softening of a sorrow or an amplification of a joy. All of the individual joys and sorrows mingle into this bowl as representative of our community here. We invite you now to come forward up the side aisles and go back the middle to drop a joy or sorrow into the bowl of water. I will now drop 3 more stones into our water of community. One stone is for all the joys and sorrows outside of these walls that go unmentioned. A second stone for the joys and sorrows that are in our hearts but go unspoken and are closely guarded. And lastly, a stone for the brokenness in our world as we search for ways to be agents of wholeness by placing ourselves in the breach. And now we will sing our children to Ari, Go Now in Peace. Our Share the Plate recipient for February is the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition. Since the early 1980s, this group has worked as an advocate for the unhoused in Cincinnati, pushing for affordable housing and humane city policies that support people who live on the margins. We urge you to give as generously as you can to support them. Giving to First Church is easy. You can text the words GIVE to 513-717-7373. If you have access to the Breeze member system, you may click now, or you can give online at firstuu.com. You can also write a check to First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati and mail it to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. If you would like to give to the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition, our Share the Plate recipient, please write GCHC in the memo line of your check. If this is your first time with us, please allow the virtual plate to pass you by. Your presence is gift enough. As you listen to the offertory, please enjoy the flowers today that are given by Amanda Lynch Oney in appreciation for the congregation's love and support after baby Tripp's birth.
It's an honor to be with you this morning. It was 5:35 in the morning, March 20, 2003, in Baghdad, when I woke to the sound of the first explosions. The dreaded war had begun. I had been in Iraq for 5 months with members of the Christian Peacemaker team and Voices in the Wilderness, living among the people, sending out their stories to the world. These are real people who would suffer if there's a war, we maintained. We were telling the truth about the horrors of war and trying to expose the lies our government had been telling and propagating to justify this horrible act of aggression. Lying there in the darkness, I cried. Tears of grief and dread that had been building up within me all those days came pouring out, and images swirled before my mind's eye of Baghdad and other cities in Iraq burning or being leveled, of mothers wailing as they saw their children engulfed in collapsed buildings. At a time like this, all the right, religiously correct answers fall away. And I felt only helplessness, anguish, and pain. I was angry too at my own government, right? I asked, where is God in this darkness? But fast track backward in time, okay? How in the world did I get here? And how did I end up staying into a war? Well, it didn't happen overnight. You can look back into my past and see all the stepping stones to this moment. Growing up in inner city Chicago, interracial city, with parents who are serious about their Christian faith, but also concerned about justice and peace. Getting involved in the 60s in the civil rights movement, where I realized that it was my responsibility as a person with white privilege to work to undo racism. And protesting against the Vietnam War, and my growing awareness of the ways our country has used violence to exploit peoples around the world. What I wanted was a God who led me here, and that's how I saw it. God led me here I wanted God to step in dramatically and change the situation, right? Yeah. Keep this tragedy from happening. Instead, I and others were given the strength and vision to respond in bold and helpful ways. Going back in time, okay. My late husband, Art, and I were moving already away from mainline expressions of Christianity, but still finding something unique and compelling about the way of Jesus, which we saw as living lives of love and service. At the very heart of this faith was a loving, grace-giving God. And our work was to be for healing, justice, reconciliation, nonviolent suffering, love, caring for the earth. This is what we found in the life of Jesus, working for the community of all. We felt called to live this out with others on a small communal farm near Athens, Ohio. We saw this as our understanding of what a church should be like. People living out of a common calling together, sharing our lives and caring for each other on a daily basis. We lived simply and together grew organic vegetables, which we sold. We also took people in, somewhat like the Catholic worker communities. All the while, we were involved locally and nationally in peace and justice work. Not an easy life, but a meaningful one. In the late 90s and early 2000s, we were invited we were invited to work with an international peace and human rights organization, Christian Peacemaker Teams, now called Community Peacemaker Teams, or CPT, which challenged us that if we are really serious about peacemaking, being peacemakers, we should be willing to take the same risks to work for peace as soldiers do for war. That's a challenge. And so we began going for parts of the year to Palestine, doing the work of accompaniment, truth-telling, and often intervention. And stories of this work are in my late husband's books back on the table there that he wrote about. So in the fall of 2002, when our government was threatening to invade Iraq, and CPT and Voices in the Wilderness sent a joint team there to try to prevent a war. Though I knew it was unlikely that we could turn around the greatest military in the world, I joined this effort because I felt I must do all I can. And when 5 months later, when the war was imminent, I was part of a smaller group who felt called to stay on into the war. We would walk with the Iraqi people. We would help in any way we could. Yet it wasn't an easy decision, as you can imagine. We all had to struggle with our fear. Yet when one of us did start to lose it, the others would gather around them and help them remember why they felt called to be here. Most of us have actually heard, the teaching that love casts out fear. Something that sounds good, but you don't know if it's really true until you have to face this on a life or death basis. I learned that it doesn't mean you have no fear. But love, the love I was given for the Iraqi people that made it possible for me to keep my focus on their needs. And it made me able to keep going ahead, moving ahead in spite of my fear. And as I went back and forth working in Iraq for the next 16 years, love is what compelled me to do this work and what gave me the strength to sustain it. So, what were we able to do? First of all, truth-telling. Right? In the face of the lies that our U.S. government was telling, that the invasion and occupation was helping the Iraqi people, that it was bringing democracy, we told the truth about how the invasion broke apart a whole society and spawning more violence among them, and terrorist groups rose up to fight Western imperialism. It was not helping or protecting the Iraqi people, but carried out for the financial gain of Western corporations and for building military power in that region. Along with human rights workers, Iraqi human rights workers, we were able to protest on the streets and report on the abuse of prisoners under the American detention system. We believed that even those who perpetrated violence should be treated with respect and not tortured or abused. By December of 2003, we completed our report on 72 prisoners and took this to the top U.S. officials in Baghdad. And this was just the first steps of what then eventually put it out into the public, the news of what was really going on there. In other situations, we accompanied and worked alongside Iraqi human rights workers. They were countering the violence around them and the violence between ethnic groups, fighting corruption and oppression, using nonviolent methods. A couple of stories. In March 2005, our team was invited to go to the city of Fallujah, 4 months after it had been attacked by U.S. military and coalition forces. It was a dangerous trip, but we went with the invitation of local leaders to witness the destruction and to accompany a small group of Shia Muslims that we had trained in nonviolence. And they wanted to go there to build relationships with Sunni Muslims across inter-ethnic lines where there was tension, and to try to build working relationships with them. Once there, we were aghast at what we saw. 60% of the buildings unlivable. rubble everywhere. We found our way to the main hospital, which was mostly destroyed. We spoke to the head doctor. We listened to community and religious leaders. And then we went to an area of the city that looked like an earthquake had hit. While we were taking pictures of, there were a few tents intermingled among the rubble so that we could document and report on what had happened there, a woman came out of one of the tents and she invited us in for tea. As we sat around the floor of the tent where 26 extended family members slept at night, the father of the family told us their story of how they left before the attacks, but they were crowded into a school building with other families. And then 3 months later, they were forced to return to the city of Fallujah and given a tent to live right next to the rubble that had been their house. Our sharing was frank and real, but we felt drawn to this family. But then it was time to leave. Thank you, they all said to us fervently, as the women and men hugged and kissed each other in good Iraqi fashion. Tears ran down our faces, our cheeks. I walked away sober for their situation, what they were facing. But I was in awe and humbled because we had done nothing to change their situation. We just listened and cared. And we said we were sorry. Those of us from the Americas, we were sorry for what our country had done to destroy their house and their city. They had every reason to see us as their enemies. And yet, we experienced the power of love to break down those divisions and hostility. We were American, we were Sunni and Shia Muslim, we were people with more power or little power and privilege. And yet we were drawn together. As we worked alongside many creative and courageous Iraqi human rights workers over the years, they were a source of encouragement to me. One of these was a Sunni Muslim woman named Awizan from the city of Kirkuk. She and her husband had risked death threats because they organized protests against the violence that was being perpetrated toward Christians and other minority religious groups. And they also brought people together and leaders of these different religious groups together to work cooperatively to deal with the injustice and things that were going on in their community. One day, I was with Awizan, and I turned to her and I asked her, "Tell me why you do this work." I'll never forget her words. "We do this because we must. The power of deadly force leads to more death, poverty, and suppression of the human spirit. We may not see peace in our lifetime, but we must choose a way that can stop the cycles of violence and bring life for future generations." Developing close relationships with people of other faiths gave me the opportunity to see through the many divisions and suspicions and even the sense of superiority that many of us have been programmed to have. My heart and understandings about faith were continually expanded, and theological tenets became less and less important. Matters of the heart and our common commitment to work out of love for those who are suffering violence and oppression bonded us together, so that I feel more in tune with them than I do with those who use the correct words, labels, and practices of faith but don't manifest these things in their life. While we were in Baghdad, I looked forward to the days I had free time to volunteer with a home for severely handicapped children. While playing with them, they gave me so much love. And this helped balance the heaviness of the grief and pain that I and others constantly took in. These moments of love and beauty that we experienced helped me through times when danger was very real. Times when I didn't know if I'd come out alive. Times when my beliefs were put to the test and refined. The most harrowing time for me was when some of us were kidnapped for several days. But fortunately, we're released unharmed. But I felt no firm footing, no assurance that I would live through this. I had to walk into a space of the unknown, a place that was frightening and hard. No theological beliefs could carry me. I had to hold on to every thread of faith and inner strength that I had. I prayed constantly, continually for strength and guidance, or silently sang songs of strength and hope. Those of us captive shared stories of our lives when we were alone together. I recall the things I learned in my previous extensive nonviolent training about staying in the present in threatening situations and how to relate to those who would threaten us. I was able to speak firmly to our captors, even if I didn't feel strong, and was able to not sink into the terror that was lurking in the wings. Later, I could look back and see ways that I was protected and guided and given strength way beyond my own. After processing this more, this is a shortened version of what I wrote. When we do give ourselves to love in action, we know it might result in personal harm, but we can also know that we do not walk alone. Even if we can't feel it, when we are stumbling along blindly in the darkness, when we accept the possibility of death, we can act boldly. So many wonderful gifts have come out of these times when we took risks to do the work we felt compelled to do. The deep experiences and trauma that I experienced working in Iraq did change my faith. We prefer seeing a God in these neat packages, seeing faith in these neat packages that all comes out well. Okay. The one I see, I've come to look at the acceptance of the paradoxes and the reality that things just are not the way I think they should be. Sound familiar? Oh, okay. And that there is just much that I still don't understand. Okay? I have problems with identifying myself as Christian because throughout history, the church has blessed and supported the rich and powerful in systems of injustice. I don't feel ensynced with people who call themselves Christian, but have discarded or twisted the core teachings of Jesus into something to make us feel good or give us power or wealth. The word God is still meaningful for me. Maybe not to everyone, but still meaningful for me as I see it as God as a life-giving force, a loving spiritual power that we can tap into, that can raise us up to living less selfishly and take powerful action. Because this is something I experienced. Others may use different language for this. God language may be too negatively loaded for you. And I see Jesus, the way Jesus articulated and lived his life, the way of love and reconciliation, the way of caring for the needs of all, very radical vision, a very radical way if we take it seriously. I see this as the most life-giving path that I know. And so that still for me is a guide, still is important. I still feel an awe and wonder at the amazing beauty and intricacy and resilience of the natural world that I can't explain, but have been healing for me. I still experience times of love breaking in almost seemingly impossible situations. Love breaking in like a gift that's given to us. Situations that seem very hard to deal with. I'm very grateful for life as it has been given back to me over and over. I have now stopped going overseas to work. And I find many worthwhile things to do here with neighbors and friends that need help and volunteering at our local food pantry. And there's endless causes of justice and peace to work for. I stand at our weekly peace vigil, protest the fracking industry and injection wells around Athens County, go out on the street after yet another black man or woman is killed, or go to Columbus to protest the big banks pouring money into more fossil fuel development and pipelines. Yet in the face of so much structural violence, I too get discouraged. But what happens if we give up? What happens if we stop speaking out, stop taking action, seeking justice? I keep on because, like always on, something deep inside of me says, I must. And I'm sure many of you, maybe in different ways than mine, have also poured your life out, poured love out for people around you because you felt you must. At the end of my second book, I wrote this, and then I'm changing a few words here. I am not the same person who came to Baghdad in October 2002. My heart has learned to love deeply and also to break. I have struggled to accept a world that is full of undeserved pain and loss caused by the callousness and cruelty of others. My faith has been tested and tried and refined to take into account all the darkness that I've taken in and not get lost in it. I never want to lose sight of beauty and kindness and the redemptive power of love. I have chosen to keep walking on, forward on with other people who have caught a vision of the power of truth and love to confront and transform powers of evil, the power-seeking violence and greed that exploit and crush a people for an institution's, government's, or individual gain. So for me, it comes back around to this. It's one thing to talk about love. to dream about love, sing about love, but another to really experience its power to break down fear and barriers of hostility. At such times, I have been given the gift to know that this power is real. So real that I have been willing to give, maybe to live my life for it.
Thank you, Peggy. Let's rise in body or spirit and sing our final song, Circle Round for Freedom, page 155. And now we will extinguish our chalice by repeating the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.